One. Welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. We are joined once again by legendary strength coach, according to Men's Health Magazine, and many others, Dan John. And today, we should like to talk about how to train if you are a regular guy. Dan, as always, I was inspired by a clip you put out recently, kind of talking about this, and I thought, what a great theme to build on, because I know most of my listeners, and probably most of yours, Dan, they would be more likely to identify as a regular guy than not a regular guy. And I don't want to, like, by regular guy, I don't mean like you're not awesome. I just think like fitness isn't your full-time thing, baby. You know what I mean?
And statistically, if you train at all, you're in the top 5%. So you're already. It's interesting how just before we can go there, only 5% of Americans exercise.
Right. So you're already a regular, even if you're just exercising, right?
Yeah, you're already off the charts if you lift weights 3 days twice a week. Yeah, you are. You're an anomaly. Good for you.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. So you're already a regular, and that's cool. That's good. We like irregularities around here. But before we get into it, maybe we should just talk about how we think about what a regular guy is. And some of my thoughts would be, you're just not trying to be a cover model, right? That's not your full-time thing. You're not the elite athlete, and you've just got other things in life that probably demand more of your time, energy, attention, and care than your fitness pursuits, your job, your family, your other hobbies, perhaps. However, you still very much care and want to make the most of your fitness pursuits. That to me sort of summarizes so like, you still want to look great, you still want to feel good, you still want to perform well, but you don't care about being the best in the world and out competing other people specifically in any fitness space. To me, that sort of starts to get around this idea of what the regular guy is in relation to fitness. But how would you maybe expand upon that, Dan?
Well, and I just want to follow up again. If if you're an outlier, if you train regular. So it's interesting because the difference between an elite athlete and what I would have just anyone who shows up do, isn't that crazy? Isn't that huge of a jump? That great thing that Dave Tate talks about. He goes, when he always labels programs in 4 parts. Let's see, shitty, sucks, good, and like kind of great, or solid.
Yeah.
And he always talks about how to jump from one to the other. To jump from just showing, going for a walk with your dog daily is miles ahead of not doing anything ever.
Yeah.
And then so I think one of the things I guess I'm trying to I want to make sure we honor the listeners and those of us who we're talking about, because you are in rare air. And so the biggest thing I think you need to make sure you do as your regular person is make sure that you really have a grasp of the walking. So on the cardio side, walking is the major thing, or whatever you're going to do. And then you have to have some kind of, every so often you have to get out of breath. Okay. Yeah. So walking and something to get you out of breath. And in the weight room side of things, I really think it's important to do the fundamentals and walk out the door.
Mm-hmm.
I'm redoing the.
So real quick, Dan, could we think about that? Oh boy, there's a lot of good stuff you just said in a short amount of time, as always. Might we want to think about that as sort of the regular guy's training pyramid, where at the bottom we have our vegetables, that's walking, have as much of that as you can, have that every day. Mm-hmm. And maybe at the top we have the sweet stuff, the desserts. That's the stuff that gets you really huffing and puffing. You don't need to do that every day, but maybe once a week, do something that gets you huffing. And now with the strength training fundamentals, maybe that's sort of in the middle, right? Yeah, couple days a week. This is where we want to, really work against some resistance.
I like it. Okay, yeah. Let's go. Mentally, my mind said 3, 2, 1, but I think I got it wrong. But so we got this little stack that I love it. 6, 7 days a week, you should walk. 3 days a week, you should lift. 1 day a week, you should do something that makes you huff and puff.
Get sweaty and out of breath, right?
The most of ways that nails it. It's interesting. The more now, the problem we have with walking in the fitness industry is, of course, we went from you know you know 2,000 steps a day to 16,000 steps a day with no discussion in between. There's that California celebrity trainer who recommends 1,600 calories a day, 16,000 steps. Well, I mean, if you're on 1,600 calories, you're probably getting emotional and mental regressions with that load. And if you don't make progress on 1,600 calories a day and 16,000, well, maybe you're just maybe you should stop. I don't know. But walking, I don't want to say 10,000, 12,000, 16, whatever. But most people would understand that. And I like between a 45-minute and an hour walk every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
One 24th of my life is walking.
Yep.
But
I'm with you, Dan. I think just having that sort of the time range is often a lot more helpful for people.
Yeah. And here's the thing. That's a big commitment by itself. It's a big commitment, which is why I like, if you are going to do something like easy strength for fat loss, we throw in that 15-minute weight workout followed by the 45-minute walk. So the entire training is an hour. And then one day a week, you should do something. Because of my titanium, I'm very happy to say this. I'm back to doing my Great 8 sprints, which makes me happy. And the Great 8 is down and back 4 times. And you're going to ask of course, the next question is, how far? What's the intensity? Well, just do the down and back 4 times, the Great 8 first. Then the next time, now one little thing, because of my legs, I backpedal. I run backwards, which feels great and is much safer than I thought. And because it's kind of it's a bit of notoriety. It's kind of it's fun, whatever. I noticed that I blast through those Great 8 very quickly, and when I walk back to my garage, I really am, trying to catch my breath the whole way.
Right.
So for me, I'm trying to slide that up to twice a week, but doing something as simple as the Great 8, you can do a complex. You can do the armor building complex, humane burpee. You've got dozens of complexes you offer. You could do something, trying to get as many, if appropriate. You're going to do 150 swings in 10 minutes. 15 swings on the minute every minute, whatever it is. The mistake you make when you do something like I've done many times, the 10,000 swing challenge, is that you take the swing, you turn into something that's probably not best designed for. I think getting sweaty with swings is great until it's not, if that makes sense. So yeah, I like this idea. Is best, and I want to add one final thing is how you schedule it. I think if you are extremely busy, I have in my programs the weekend warrior stuff, where on Saturday and Sunday you lift weights, and on Wednesday you do one lift. So it's easy if you're an Olympic lifter. I'll just say it this way. So you snatch and clean and jerk and front squat on Saturday. You power snatch, you power clean, you back squat, and get bench press on Sunday.
Right.
Wednesday you do one lift, and the other days of the week you get your lunch walk in. You walk for your lunch or whatever you get in.
Sure.
So a lot of it is timing in life. A lot of it is just making the time to do it.
Yeah. No, this is great. There's a lot I want to build on here. So just to reiterate the main theme, if you're a regular guy, and by the way, that's me. So even though, a lot of what pays my mortgage is fitness stuff, I'm not competing in the fitness industry to be a cover model or a powerlifter. I essentially teach what I myself do. And I'm a guy who, Dan, as you know, has 1 million children.
Yeah.
I've literally 1 million kids, right? I've doing a lot of writing projects, a lot of music projects, a lot of business projects, but fitness is still really, really important to me. So I want to look and feel my best, but I'm not concerned about being the best in the world at anything fitness related, right? Like fitness for me is something I inherently enjoy and will hopefully facilitate other things that I want in life, including being able to be a healthy role model for my kids and hopefully being around for my grandkids and all that other good stuff. So like this is me. I'm a regular guy when it comes to fitness. Dan, I don't know if you are as much of it because you're still competing, but you've definitely had phases of training like a regular guy. I take it, right?
Oh,
And Mhm,
no, and I mean, right now, I mean, I'm closer to 66 than 65.
mhm.
Um, I mean, my daughter turned 33 yesterday. I've got grandkids. I'm starting to realize that that I have more yesterdays than tomorrows. I mean, I know that. So yeah, one of the things I have changed the way I train. I'm putting together some new goals. In fact, one of the things I'm doing today is I'm writing out a list of things. Um, I take a meditation class on Mondays, and our instructor told me this little assignment. Uh, and I think it's okay for me to share it. I don't think it's intellectual property. She asks you to write down 22 things you want. Well,
22.
yeah, it's a very specific thing to her, and it's not even a Fibonacci number, so I don't know if I can handle it.
Yeah, that's weird. 22. Huh?
22. You can already see I'm getting the shakes.
Yeah, 22. This is
One
weird.
one of the things another student said, it sounds like the easiest assignment in the world, but if you're like me, where basically I mean, I don't I don't want to go to college. I've been to college. I don't, I don't. Many of the wants that I have are already, the boxes are already not only been checked. I've got things on the wall to show you that. I mean,
Yeah. Are these
I
supposed to be like deep ones or like
well, that's it.
some days I want Taco Bell, but I'm not sure if I want to put that on the list or not.
But here's the thing: if you write down, I want Taco Bell. By the way, a fine eatery, decent
Fine.
restaurant.
Yeah, totally fine. Right.
Uh,
Don't
that's one.
turn your noses up at Taco Bell, people. Come on.
And now that's one, and now you got 21 to go.
Okay.
And one of the things what it does for you is that it shows you, I guess, so you get to the point where for a while there you're saying things like I want a bean burrito, and then the next one is I want to wake, like today we woke up to another snowstorm, another entire foot again. It's bad here in Murray today. Well, I'd like to be able to see the sun. Okay, well, okay, and then you just keep writing those things down. So some of them are very light,
Hmm.
but all of a sudden, according to the other student, it gets deep again. And I thought that was interesting because probably of the first 6 or 7, there'll be 2 or 3 things you think a lot about. And then you'll just throw in some filler. And then it'll get deep and then filler and then deep. And then when you're really scratching, from say 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, those last ones, something might pop up and you go, really? I want that.
Hmm.
And I think there's value. So when we're talking about me at my age, where I'm at now, uh, I might finish my want list and realize that, and I already have one, and I don't want to share it because it's a little bit of a bit of a reach. But I wrote that down, and it was like, holy shit! I mean, jeepers! I said, is that really what I want? And it's like, yeah, maybe so. Maybe
Maybe so. Right.
maybe at this age. So it's a different kind of thing than I ever wanted before.
Yeah.
Am I regular? Well, in the Scarecrow of Oz, there's a great line. Ordinary people are leaves in the trees. They die and they fall off. I like the truly extraordinary ones. I like to think in much of my life, I've been a little bit extraordinary, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I mean, I'm just being candid. Uh, Not a lot of my neighbors flip cabers at Highland Games. Not a lot of my neighbors throw the discus, volunteer as much as I do, and write books. Having said that, how I train now in the last few weeks is kind of the way I think regular people should train.
Right.
I'm doing a lot of military presses. I'm doing a lot of hanging bent knee leg raises. I'm doing a lot of half kneeling presses. I'm doing a
Hmm.
lot of hangs. I'm doing a lot of glute loops and clamshells, goblet squats and overhead squats, and suitcase carries.
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah, and don't, gentle listeners, again, do not take the the term regular guy to be derogatory in any sense. In fact, you might want to approach fitness as a regular guy, so that you can be extraordinary across the entire range of your life, right? Um, and this is true, Dan. We've talked about this before. If you want to be like a really expert generalist to kind of surge in certain directions, you kind of got to hang back in maintenance in other directions.
yeah.
But the key to be a good generalist is to make sure you stay in maintenance. You don't just let it fall away completely.
That's yeah, that's an outstanding point. For last week we didn't get to it, but somebody asked a question about what books we read, and we didn't get to it, and it kind of got me thinking again about.
Well, they can ask it again, and we'll take it in Q&A here if we do.
Okay, but I was thinking the same thing. There are times in my life where I don't read as much as I normally do, but I don't stop read. I don't empty out my
You don't
life.
ever stop reading completely, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's times where I focus a lot more on. I don't know. There are times I really lock in on my fitness.
Yeah.
There are times where every conversation begins and ends with my body weight that day.
Right.
Because I've got a weightlifting meet coming up or something
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like that point. Yeah. So you maybe you play around with which one gets the bump. If I find out one of my daughters is ill, that
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that leaps up,
Right.
and everything else loses a little importance.
But there's always this sort of floor, right? This maintenance floor, like, I don't need to, and I probably shouldn't just go
Okay.
below this, right?
So for me, my maintenance floor, I would say would be working out 3 days a week. That would
Yeah.
I've gone as few as 2 weightlifting sessions a week, but I threw 7. So yeah.
And that's something that you should be able to do no matter kind of how crazy or hectic your life is. And it doesn't have to be in an hour and a half session. So again, so I like coming back to this pyramid because I think this will be a helpful visual for people. So at the bottom, just think of it like a food pyramid, in a sense. At the bottom those are your vegetables. Have as much of that as you can every day. That's just your walking. Just get outside and move around, right? In the middle, hey, 3 days a week of just good old-fashioned resistance, strength, and hypertrophy training, right? A lot of ways you can cook that up.
And
Plenty of options there,
they're
right?
all right as long as you kind of work the whole body.
Exactly. Yeah. So whole body movements, right? Push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, all the stuff we've talked about a million times on this podcast, something in that ballpark, right? And then at the top, hey, even just once a week, run a complex, run some sprints, get sweaty, get tired, right? Hey, pretty minimalist. And it's not just that this will keep you in like decent shape, but the truth is, if you really put a lot of focus and attention in that and get your diet tuned in, you're gonna look and perform awesome, right? It's not like you just kind of have to settle for just like a little bit. If you do that really well as a regular guy, you will look and perform. You will look and perform highly irregularly. That's a very tough word to say. That's like brewery irregular. I'm not even going to try it again. You won't be normal. So I'm trying to say you'll be pretty spectacular, but you'll still be kind of approaching it as a regular guy where fitness is not your main or primary thing, where you're not trying to be the best in the world. And you can focus on other things that are and probably should be more important to you in life. And it's okay to have phases of life where fitness, assumes a higher priority for whatever reason. But I think you would agree with this, Dan. If fitness is sort of the whole of your life, that's probably a problem. Fitness should be adding to your life and supporting your life, but it should not consume your entire life. At that point, we need to have a deeper conversation.
Yeah, and I think you pretty much nailed it right there. I mean, but if I was going to stuff something that should be in, I usually come back in goal setting to financial and physical. Those are just the two I do not. Partially because I'm American, obviously because I had completely different plans when I turned 65 about how I would be doing financially. So I've had to rebuild my entire financial portfolio in 2 years, which is impressive, and I did. Financial and physical, as an American anyway, I think would always be two of the things you gotta make sure you don't get. those are the two you need quarterly reviews on, annual checkups, long-term vision. If you're following what I'm saying,
Yeah.
and it's interesting, but those are also the two. If you lift weights little and often over the long haul, you're going to be okay. If you walk a little bit every day for years, you're going to be okay. If you eat vegetables at every meal for a long time, you're going to be okay. If you start saving at 18 and you save a little bit every month, don't worry about any of your goals. You'll be great. You follow the foundations, basics. It's true. For anything that I think is important in life, almost universally, foundational stuff is the key.
Right.
Um, and you could even say it with relationships a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider myself. I'm not in a place to give relationship advice, but uh, the foundations, the basics. You know, when you're probably talking, I don't know if you're talking to your kids about, things like what they want to do in life. But one of the things when you're a parent with, you know, how old's Rowan now?
All the time we have those talks.
Yeah, how's Rowan?
Roan is almost 10, so he's so
Same
just
age today,
so for the gentle listeners, essentially 5 kids, boy, rest are girls, 10 down by 2s. That's how to think about it.
yeah. So
But no, we talk about it all the time. In fact, Mira, second
yeah,
oldest last night, right now she plans to be a video game designer, and she wants to move to Japan to do it. This is the thing that she's on currently. Right?
okay.
We like
So
We like Nintendo in our household. Dan.
yeah, so I mean, you're going to have these conversations about, spouse and whatever, and you're coming up, and you know, there's a great scene in Up in the Air. It's a George Clooney movie, which I think is very good. I think it's a
Oh
phenomenal.
yeah, I do. I remember that one. That was
And he and his the girl he's with are comforting the young lady who's just lost her boyfriend.
is that the one where he fires people? That's his
Yeah,
job, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's. I
That
think
was
it's a
funny.
really
Yeah.
good movie.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I did like that one. I tried to start another one that he was in recently with Julia Roberts. I thought it was awful. I turned it off. I almost never turn a movie off. I can almost usually just like grind through even the most boring, but that one I just
Yeah.
lost interest
With
almost right
Julia
away.
Roberts, I find turning off the movie earlier is better than later. Yeah. That's just me. I don't. Her movies don't tend to be much.
Mhm.
But and it's very funny. And the woman finally says at the end, she goes, "Actually, if it's just a nice smile, that might be enough." And it's funny because when you're looking at relationships, I still think, and I'm put on my death thinking this, is that those foundational things that we agree on these foundational things first.
Right.
Like, if you're with somebody who thinks that chocolate is the answer to all questions, or dessert, they're someone who likes to bake and make desserts and thinks exercise is an anathema, and thinks you're an idiot for going on a walk, and doesn't care about the condition of the house, is a hoarder and a slum. But you love her, well, that's great, but you're
There's
going
gonna
to have
be some tension. There's gonna
you're
be
going
some
to have to
tension.
make some bends with your life and body to make
Right.
that work. Yeah.
Right, yes. By the way, gentle listeners, we are gonna head to Q&A here in just a minute, so please keep the comments and questions coming. We always love to hear from you.
Yeah.
But I just wanna, again, summarize a few of the points because this, I think, has been a great framework, um, that should, I think, serve most of the audience. Because again, I imagine the vast majority of people, I know the majority of people because I'm in conversation with them, would happily check the box regular guy, right? If you're an elite athlete, I honestly don't know why you would be listening to my podcast anyways, because that's not who I train. I'm not a
No, no, no,
producer
no.
of elite athletes,
Here's
right?
funny. If I was an elite athlete, I'd listen to you, Pat,
Hmm.
because uh, every elite athlete I've ever been around. Here's the thing. Look, do you mind if I just jump in and tell you why you're so wrong?
Please, I always love to hear it. Yeah.
When I'm hanging around Major League Baseball players, of course, it's nice for me to be around them because I don't have any. I don't worship the professional athletes because they're not track guys. So
No, there's one team I care about. That's the Lake Country Dock Hounds in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and they start playing again next month. I'm very
there
excited.
you go. And my bees had a big win yesterday. So, but Major League Baseball players, they'll make a sign like this. That means you're an autograph hound. It's kind of a warning sign. But at least the guys I was around, most of the guys they talk about finances. It's money. It's always money. It's money, money, money. When you're around Major League Baseball players, they talk about money. It's always, the conversation starts and ends with money. Money, 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 money. So when you're around elite performers, very often they don't talk. In fact, my dad taught me this when my dad was with Wilt Chamberlain, the great basketball player. I had the story. I've told the story 100 times. When I asked my dad, I go, did you guys talk about basketball? And my dad went like this. He goes, never talk to a basketball player about basketball. We talked about the discus throw and the high jump. And it's a good life lesson. So one of the things that elite athletes want to talk about is often anything but what they do. When you're around special forces guys, they'll segue into, the alphabet soup of things and stuff. But very often when they're with me, it's all sets and reps. It's all high-end sets and reps, which is interesting because if you know me, what's the last thing I want to talk about at a restaurant?
Sets and reps.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we do have some people who and I've already I know it for sure. You're a very popular podcast on the way to work for a lot of people I know. So
thank you, Dan. Thank you.
It's true. So, and one thing I do want to just reach out. I want to thank Kevin up here. Kevin thinks it's cool that I go to courses.
Let's start taking some of these comments. I saw that one too. Let me pull it up.
Yeah. So, Kevin, you're exactly right. What I should also mention is after I go to my chakra meditation class, I go to a dance class. I am, the old joke about the Irish were dangerous dancers. It's an area, it's a thing I've always wanted to do. So I go to Stan as my dance instructor, and he's very good, and I enjoy it. And it's honestly because I feel like that's a gap in my knowledge, and I enjoy dancing. So, but Kevin, I appreciate you saying that. The fact that I still take courses, and I don't think I've gone a year of my life without taking some kind of class.
Yeah, and that's really the key right there, is that, unfortunately, a lot of people, they follow the trajectory of, essentially once they are done with college, if they get to college, their development in terms of intellectual development just plummets. It just stops, right? But the greatest, the high achievers, the greatest coaches, the theme that I have seen is they only continue to increase the amount of education that they receive throughout their entire lives. And certainly I've tried to model that myself. I have coaches in all areas of my life that I care about. So far as I can tell, that'll be a never ending pursuit and endeavor of mine as well. So that's not an irregular thing among certainly all my great coaches themselves had coaches, every single one, right? My great guitar instructors still got lessons, right? My strength coaches were still, even if they didn't have a personal trainer every day, they were still going to the seminars, to the workshops, still reading the books, still taking the courses, all of that, right? So just something that's worth noting and aspiring to, for sure.
It's very important. And my meditation instructor independently had read my books. And that's always interesting because we discuss some things afterwards because she needs guidance on her training.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a fun situation. She teaches me this meditation to make me, and it helps with the concussions and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I talk about glute work. And that to me is when the world is starting to shape into the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But coaches will often be able to help fill each other's gaps when they come together. Right. Yeah. to be sure.
And have the skill set to explain it to another coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah,
And the great thing about working with other coaches too, when you find situations like that, is because they're coaches, they just tend to be better and easier to work with, right? Because they appreciate what an annoying client is like. And so
sure,
they try not to be one, right?
sure.
Meaning they're receptive to criticism, they take responsibility, they actually listen, all those sorts of things, right?
Show up on time or early.
They're on time, they show up, right? They do the work, they do their homework, right? Yeah. Coaches tend to make awesome clients, is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. All right, let's keep going here. Um, Kevin has a follow up comment. He says, I was a regular guy 2 decades ago when I was average, very active guy. Now I'm above average because I am still the very active guy, and others my age are super soft. Yeah, I think that highlights your point, Dan, that just given the fact that you're even exercising at all makes you a statistical anomaly. So regular guy isn't even, I guess, totally appropriate in this situation, but yeah.
Yeah. It's something I keep bumping into my whole life. You know, to be to be. I mean, it's so easy to be above average. It's actually pretty damn easy to be outstanding. You just have to do, honestly, show up on time. Stay, repeat. Will make you above average.
Yeah.
Doing a little extra makes you outstanding. I think, and Earl Nightingale talked about this in the 50s. He felt it was easier to be successful then than any time in history. I think it's even more so easier now to be successful.
You know, it's funny. There's this filtering and selection effect that happens, Dan, just because the sort of life that we live, what we see, probably for the both of us and for a lot of people here, um, doesn't reflect the average. I mean, for example, when I walk into the grocery store and I see all the soda, I think like, who's drinking soda? Because none of the people I hang out with drink soda, right? I don't see people drinking soda at the gym, but that's just because that's the environment that I've shaped. But the truth is, a lot of people are still drinking soda. Way too many, a ton, right? So like, I'm only surprised for a second, and then I remember, oh yeah, no, that's just because there's a sort of filtering or selection effect because of the
There is.
that
I
I
mean,
right, yeah,
when I'm always amazed at restaurants when they still ask if you want dessert at the end.
hmm
Uh, and my thought is, who, I mean, who's? Don't take this wrong, gentle listener. I I've had people come to my house for meals and say, "Is there a dessert?" And I think to myself, it's not. It's barely even a word I know anymore. And I'm not being that guy. I'm not being Mr. Fitness guy or anything.
Here's a
I'm
bowl
just
of
saying
ice
it's just
cubes,
like it's
enjoy,
so
right?
out of my.
hmm
Yeah. It. Yeah.
But that's it, right? I mean, there's a good and a bad to that. The good is that hopefully you have shaped and crafted or molded your habits and environments in a way that is really conducive to being awesome and being excellent and flourishing. But at the same time, in doing that, you can kind of lose sight of how irregular you may be, and how many people are still drinking soda, right? It's a lot. hmm
And if you don't mind, how about this? It, I love this idea of this little pyramid because if you do this, uh, if you take meals and you go water's the base, veggies the next, protein's the top. We went walk, lift, sweaty. You know, the difference between what I would ask an elite athlete to do and this regular person we're discussing. I mean, it's going to be the exact same shapes. I mean, I might want my elite athletes to take in more protein, but it's still going to be water, veggies, protein. And
Yeah.
I might want my elite athletes to lift 5 days a week, but it's still going to be whatever that walk becomes. It could be discus
Yeah.
throw.
And we might do some Olympic lifting versus kettlebell swings or something
Yeah,
like that, right? So it's
it's
it's it's more fine tuning around the edges than it is complete structural differences,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's like when you hear someone do the baseline of I don't want to get too far into music because I'll get lost, but well, there's a scene in Wayne's World where he goes, bam, bam, bam. You know, he does the start of Stairway to Heaven, you know. There's a sign on the wall that says no stairway to heaven.
Mhm.
You know, it's a lot different for a young guitar player to learn that first 8 notes versus to play Stairway to Heaven in a concert on your guitar.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
but we're in degrees. They're both playing the guitar, and the route from those first strums to the concert is the same as the route from doing a discus turn to throwing it at elite levels. The difference really is mostly, well, time would be the biggest difference, right? Time and intensity, and intensity.
And not just time, but deep time.
Yeah,
Deep time.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's really it, deep time. That's the difference between a lot, but for success is largely a numbers game, right? You put in the time, you keep playing the game, and it's not and hopefully you don't play it exactly the same way, because with every strikeout or setback, you hopefully learn something and refine your approach and refine you try to play the first little bit of Stairway to Heaven, and you record yourself and realize, "Oh, okay, those notes weren't ringing out quite as well as they should be. So, okay, I need to press down the fret a little bit harder or whatever, right?" So you're refining as you go along. But boy, it just takes deep time. It just takes a lot of time for anything, for anything. 10 years, 10 years. People don't like to hear it. But like
Yeah.
before you can be truly good at anything, 10 years, 10 years. I don't
Well,
like 10,000 hours. I like 10 years.
yeah. Well, in 1968, uh, m- uh, my seventh grade teacher said I was a good writer. And then overnight in 2008, my first book came out.
There you go. Hmm.
Yeah, just overnight success, 40 years. You know, I mean, I'm just, it's, I want to write a book for years and it just never happened. And then all of a sudden, it felt like weeks I had a book in my hands, you know.
Right. Hmm.
And so sometimes that deep time, when you look back, yeah, that was 40 years, but at the time it was just, you were just doing the work, really, huh?
Just doing the work. That's right. And that's not uncommon, for a lot of skills, but especially writing. A lot of writers, they sort of, it's not like boxing, right? Right. Where like it does kind of help to be maybe a little bit younger or something like that,
Yeah,
right? The real physical sports are different, but a lot of writers, they don't really kind of get their break or peak until later in life, right? Because there's more deep time required to sort
yeah.
of build those skills. And you don't need to be, I guess, at, peak physical um condition like an elite athlete, where you got to hit that balance of like getting early enough practice to get good at it, but
Yeah,
still young enough to have the reflexes and stuff like that, right? Hmm.
it's yeah. I like this point very much. Well, let's answer questions, but I do think that if any listener would just say, "Okay, I can't train like what I think elite trainers train like, but I can do this," this is better than 90% of the crap I tell you.
Yeah, Wayne says, Dan and Pat, two perfects to you, Wayne. All right, just a compliment. Always want to highlight these. Clem says, "Thank you, Dan. I got on easy strength at the end of February after reading your Omni book, and I feel and perform way better than I have in a long time." That's two
Well,
perfects right there.
I hear it's a phrase I hear actually a lot, Pat. That once people start doing that easy strength, essentially it goes right back to what we just said. Takes us right back. So basically, a couple days a week you lift weights, you go for a walk. A couple days a week you get the work in, and you don't punish yourself because you can't train for 12 hours. And and then when you watch these Netflix documentaries about these bodybuilders, when they're in their 50s and 60s and they're just usually wrecks, usually. And they talk about what they did to get there, you're like, well, maybe that's not a goal I'd want anyway. I don't want to be injecting that much stuff in my body, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's worth
And
a
that's,
moment's
and
reflection.
that's part
Yeah. So think about that, gentle listeners, right? If your goal is to be best in the world in something in the fitness space, okay. But like really, and I'm always about dreaming and shooting big, but it is important to have the right perspective of everything that it takes. And the truth is, I mean, even among the best and all the enhancements which are obvious, right? There's still just the luck component, if you want to call it that, having the genetics and early start and training or that. Okay, so have that. Do you have that in your favor? Okay, if you think you've got that in your favor, you've got one box check. Then you have to consider all the enhancements you're going to have to take and the effect and the very negative effects that's going to have in your life. That's undoubtable. That is an inherent built-in risk that you cannot avoid at the time, right?
Growth, yeah.
And then you have to be willing to push yourself so hard in training that you almost certainly will require multiple back surgeries down the line, like Ronnie Cole and all these other guys like that. These are just the prices you would have to pay if you want to be the best in the world at this particular thing. And all I ask people is to just be aware of that and consider that. Consider that in relation to the whole rest of your life. And just because unfortunately a lot of people, a lot of young people are sort of, I guess, duped, right? Into because they don't there's not a lot of transparency in the industry, Dan, as you know. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of transparency in the industry. Now, I was fortunate that many of my coaches were very transparent about, and so I kind of learned early on, and I just said, yeah, that's cool and all, but that's not for me. First off, I'm a kind of naturally skinny Irish dude, so I don't really have the genetic box checked, and I'm not that interested in being a pro bodybuilder anyways. I just want to look strong and feel good and be lean and be able to perform well. So I'm not going to worry about any of that stuff. I'm not going to worry about taking drugs. I'm not going to worry about training myself to a point of, injury that I will not be able to recover. So it's never even concerned me. So I don't know where I'm going with this, Dan, but maybe I'll let you just finish my thought if you don't mind. Yeah.
Well, it's something I decided to do years ago. Earl Nightingale talked about it. It's the lead the field concept where you just want to be in the top 5% of anything you aspire to. And the thing that shocked me is when he was talking about this top 5% is how low the bar is. If you want to be in the top 10% of writers of all time, you have to sell a book, 10,000 copies. You've done that, right?
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah.
And I think about that now when there's a guy I'm thinking about, he's got a terrible.
Yeah, and real quick, that's a huge point, Dan. It's like to be the best in the world, the bar is almost impossibly high. But to be in the top 5, it's a lot lower than people think, right?
Yeah, I'm never going to outsell J.K. Rowling.
No, yeah, right? Yeah, right.
I mean, even if I really did even if I had the best diet book of all time, I wouldn't even touch one of her books. Not one. But 10,000, that's doable, believable. As a discus thrower, there's no question I'm in the top 10%. I'm ranked on these lists, these international lists. There's my name. It usually comes off a little weird because I have multiple first names. As an Olympic lifter, I know for sure I was number 3 one time in Olympic lifting in the nation. That was yay for me. Am I in the top 5% of teachers at the schools I've been at? I never got a Teacher of the Year award, but I feel like my students still reach out, contact me. I would say that maybe you can't measure that, but I'd like to say I was a good teacher. And so I just go through my life and I look. Income wise, I'm pretty sure I know where I'm at. Yeah, it's funny because if you find what you're going to do and just like, for example, this would be a very interesting thing to do is that if you're going to do one of these little things, whatever it is, go to your age, your weight class, your gender class, find out what it takes to be in the top 5% of the competitors. And you'll probably find a very interesting thing. That number is very reasonable, very achievable, very doable, and go,
And it's achievable and doable without probably having to expense something else that is very precious and dear to you, like your health, for example. Right. Yeah.
I think I mentioned a couple of years ago, my neighbor literally just left his house in disarray, and he was not a good person, but it's another story another time. Well, my other neighbor and I, we toured his house because he didn't lock the doors and there was these muscle and fitness magazines in his house from the 80s. And my neighbor tossed me and he goes, "Here, you might want these." I didn't recognize a single bodybuilder from those magazines. And we're talking about 15 years later, maybe, okay, maybe 20 at most. And they were all forgotten. And what I'm trying to do, folks, is I'm trying to turn this on the other side too. So every so often I'll get somebody, I got published in you know, men's men's longevity magazine, published. I'm famous. And as I often say, when I wrote for Men's Health, I would write an article about, here are the 5 most important things you can do.
Yeah.
In the next month's issue, they would have another list of 5 that completely was the opposite of what I said.
Of course, yeah.
So getting published can mean nothing, but the 10,000 book, the 10,000, sold is huge. Getting published is great. The 10,000 is a different line. And it's nice to have those kinds of lines in your head,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This was a really good add-on to the conversation, because it might give some incentive of why people might want to choose to train like a regular guy rather than trying to be the best in the world. And, we're not telling you that you must do this or the other. We're just saying it helps to have perspective. That's all.
Dr. Brunetti says I'm his best client because I do what he says. Dr. Spengler, my dentist, tells me I'm his best client because I do what he says to do. Patrick Ides, a good friend of mine who I consult with, he says I'm his best client because I do what he says he does. Honestly, just following up puts you in rare air. And it gets us back to the nice smile thing.
Yeah, it does. Wally says, had a great dry January, slept amazing, energy was off the charts along with body comp improvements. I don't drink a lot, mostly weekends, but I'm wrestling with giving it up for good. But bourbon, how do you gents handle alcohol consumption? Struggling here. Well, this is a good question. It's an important question. And my answer is, I don't drink. I don't do it. I'll maybe have like 1 or 2 beers per year when I'm out at some social setting, but I came to a point in my life where I realized it was conflicting with other goals that I had. It was not productive. It never had me feeling good. It constantly disrupted my sleep. And as much as I enjoyed the taste of beer or whiskey or wine, I realized that life is about managing compromise and decisions. I cut it out, and it has been out again, except for like the 1 or 2 beers I have per year ever since. And it was a great decision, and I'm happy I did it. But that was what I did. But Dan, why don't we get your perspective on it?
Well, I mean, if you follow the events of the last 5 years of my life, I mean, you'll know that this is going to be a tougher discussion for me. So, 2 years ago on St. Patrick's Day was, the dark night of the soul for me. And I was in bed by myself watching How I Met Your Mother and using every ounce of self-discipline I could not to go drink, because I felt that if I started drinking then I wouldn't stop. And that was an important day in my life. I last night, by the way, took second again in trivia 2 weeks in a row. It's embarrassing. Last night at trivia, I had a Redbreast. It's an Irish whiskey, a delicious Irish whiskey, toasting my daughter's birthday, and that was it for the night. So for me, I would say that, Genesis chapter 4, it is an urge, but I can be its master. And I've worked hard on that. I'm striving very hard. I have many dry days now. I probably have more dry days than I do. And when I do drink, I'm very careful now about about one and done, that kind of thing. Wally, I think that's the dry January was a really good thing. I do want you to just make sure you as you can hear in my voice, Patrick, I'm struggling. But um, well, I think the thing on this is this: make sure you have it in a have some kind of rules if you're gonna. Um, yeah, I agree 100%. My sleep quality is better. This is better. That's better. Much easier to lose body mass without alcohol. Um, just come up with some rules for yourself, and ping me if you need any other help. Okay, on that. But just I think it does help. Like Patrick has a rule; he'll drink 1 or 2 beers. Whatever it was. At a gathering. And all of a sudden, though, but if you find that a gathering is this or that, Patrick, you broke your own rules. Just keep an eye on your rules when you're now when it comes to other drugs that are harder. When I was young, they said drugs are bad, don't do them. Okay. But now I was with the Salt Lake police officers the other day, and they said that every street drug they find now is just fentanyl. And so everything's fentanyl on the streets of Salt Lake City right now, and fentanyl, and they're adding this new stuff to it. So, I mean, I would be extremely, if you're using illicit drugs. Now, I know that might not be.
Don't do drugs. I'm happy to say it. Don't do. Pat Flynn Show is the good old fashioned advice. Don't do drugs, right? Yeah, yeah. Call us old fashioned, but I think that's still good advice. And Dan, your honesty and the way you presented that is actually really helpful, because when it comes to drinking, I think it is, of course, not just person sensitive, but family sensitive. And I'm always happy to talk about this. My family has a long history of alcoholism in it, right? And I've been aware to that through ugly personal experience. And I know that this is something that runs in my family line. I know that this is a risk that is sort of built into me. So that goes into my decision making. And that was actually a very critically important factor in my decision making of how I was going to think about whether or not drinking would be a regular thing for me. It might have even been the most important one, to seeing how it has affected so many of my family members, right? But there are other people, of course, that can just get along just fine with it, and it might be just fine. They can drink and find moderation, hit their goals, and feel fine, or this or that. So I don't think that there's a perfect, easy answer to this, but hopefully we've given some context to help you make a prudent decision around the matter, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a tough issue. Here in Utah, it's getting much better, but many of the kids who aren't of the predominant religion drink just to show everybody they're not, and I think that is an issue. So. On one side, I understand it is. Wayne just wrote something like, I'm sorry, Kevin wrote, when you drink, your family's drinking. It's choices, and I think there's some truth to that, and a lot of truth to that. But I just wish. And here's the interesting thing: I'm sure many of our European listeners are going, "What is the problem again with you Americans?" Because we're not very good. It's funny because in places I've been in Europe, literally we'll drink at every meal, but no one drinks to excess. And it's that thing. There's something about the American experiment that runs in the problem. Now I know obviously there's alcoholics in Europe. I know that, but I think it's whatever it is about the American experiment. We tend to have some issues. The end. I'm off my soap opera. I'm done. Yeah.
Well, that was an important question. I'm glad we got to spend a bit of time discussing it. And there's also just issues of body comp and extra calorie consumption too, but I think those are a little bit more superficial. So
yeah.
Anyway, all right, let's see if we can squeeze in one more quickly here before we wrap it up. Here's just one on kettlebell training. Joel says, "Hey guys, I've been training with kettlebells for a few weeks. Been loving it and found you both to be great resources. So thank you." Well, thank you, Joel. I have a torn ACL from soccer. Any advice on strengthening? Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if you have a torn ACL, I mean, it becomes medical. It's a medical intervention question. I won't
Yeah.
touch it. But
Little beyond the pay grade here, this
yeah,
podcast.
once you're cured, I would take you. This is something I really emphasize people. If you have a physio or a PT or whatever you have, depending on what country you're in, and they tell you to do this, do this. I think the biggest thing, I think getting yourself back, that leg back up is the most important thing. Something I learned with my own single limb injuries in my career. I was cleared to play. My first knee injury, I was cleared to play. And I even told the person, I can do 300 units with my left leg and I can only do 60 with my right leg. Yeah, but 60 is the number you need to be at. And I was like, but I can do 300 with my left and 60 with my right. Yeah, 60 is the threshold. And so one of the things I think we've come a long way in physical training, physical therapy since then. Now people really understand the importance of getting yourself back up to the, normal might never happen after a surgery or something like that, but getting yourself as strong and as powerful as you can before you get out there and try it again.
Yeah.
I don't, that's there. So listen to what your doctor, your physios, your PTs say, do what they say, get yourself in great shape. Don't cut corners, do it right.
Perfect. Two perfects. Dan, before we say goodbye, anything you want to announce concerning Dan John University, reminding people of the Good Omni book or any new projects you're working on?
EasyStrengthOmnibook.com, still not selling like I was hoping it would. But we already had a nice positive comment in the notes about it, and that meant a lot. I am working on a supplement called Easy Strength for Fat Loss, because we chopped it out. I think there's only one little chapter on it, but that's what most people want. So it'll be available for like $5 or $10 as a supplement, but it's already, I would say we're sneaking up on 300 pages now. So I'm going to have to really do a lot of editing on it. The mistake I've made is there's a few mistakes I've made, and forcing. That's why you take meditation. That's why you go for walks. I cleared it up on a post meditation walk. You can do Easy Strength for Fat Loss as written for about 2 months, and then you need a little bit like a hypertrophy dosage, and but the formula itself is just like stealing, man. It's like stealing. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, and the other thing I picked up, and I know we're running out of time, is that the mistake I made is when I tried to force the fat loss gains. I went from 105 kilos to 99. I went from 231 to 218 in very short order by increasing the number of complexes I did. Well, and that worked, except when you force your body to lose a lot of weight, there's that little bounce you get. And so I have to have a couple of caution chapters on. If you're going to lose all this weight for the wedding, remember that that's going to bounce back up. And I think it's inevitable. You might disagree, but I think it might. Losing weight too quick, losing fat too quick tends to set up some things for a rebound effect. And to me, that's why the Clarence Bass method of, a pound or two a month, a kilo a month probably will stay off, whereas 10 pounds in 2 weeks probably won't.
Yeah, good stuff, Dan. Good stuff. And gentle listeners, of course, aside from helping out Dan John's very good book, you can help the podcast, which we would appreciate by doing a couple simple things. You can comment after the stream, share your thoughts, let us know if you're a regular guy and how your training's been going. Review the podcast. Your reviews, your rankings really help to please the algorithm, which is what it's all about these days. So do that. Go give the algorithm a tickle for us, and we'd appreciate that. We appreciate you. We appreciate you, Dan, and all the wisdom you bring here.
You bet.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.